Welcome to the very first episode of the Thinking Woman podcast. I'm so excited you're here, and if you're here with me, then I already know two very important things about you. One, you're smart, obviously. Two, you are done settling for surface level advice when it comes to your relationships and personal growth. This isn't just another podcast about love and dating. There's literally a million of them, okay? You can't throw a stone without hitting one of these podcasts. It's about you, how you think, how you show up, how you create the relationship and the life that you want. This whole podcast is created because women like you and I, women who think, women who analyze, women who want to be better, and believe me, not everybody wants to. You know who I'm talking about. There's literally somebody in your life right now that you're thinking of. You're like that person. I know that person doesn't want to be better. No shade. Like, they're going to live their life, but you just know that they don't want to change their ways. This is not for that woman. This is for you. This is real, actionable advice that doesn't just tell us to generically manifest anything or to be more feminine with no real explanation. You know you've heard them. You know you see that stuff on Instagram. You know that it exists. And you're like, okay, cool. But how do I actually do that? What are the steps? Like, girl, I've been there. So here's what's coming. Here's what you can expect in this inaugural episode that I'm so excited to give you today, okay? I'm laying it all out. Who I am, what I stand for, why everything I teach is designed to put you back in control of your life and relationships. Because let's be real, you are the only one that gets to say so. You need to be the one in the driver's seat, okay? So first things first, I was not always the woman who had relationship figured out. In fact, I was the woman who thought working harder, being more independent, proving myself was the key to being loved. Literally, I worked myself to death. Spoiler alert. That was not the way to do it, as you've probably found yourself. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in a household where the only thing I knew about marriage was that it ended. Yeah. And not just ended, but ended poorly. My mom divorced twice. My grandmother divorced twice. My aunt should have gotten divorced. It was not the best situation. Okay? So, healthy is not the way I would describe any of the romantic relationships that I grew up around, if you can relate. So, what did I learn as I was growing up, not knowing anything different? Okay? What I learned growing up about relationships is that they weren't safe. You couldn't rely on them. That if I ever let my guard down, I would be in a literal world of hurt. I absorbed every feminist ideal that told me to be strong, to never need a man. Legit, like, I don't need no man, okay? And that if I wanted something done right, I'd have to do it myself. Please tell me that I was not the only one there, okay? Like, I swallowed that programming hook, line, and sinker. Shameful. But guess what? That mindset led me straight into heartbreak after heartbreak. I know you can relate. I was terrible at communication, never tried to understand my partner's side, and let's be real, super selfish, very selfish. I carried all of this right into my marriage, convinced that I knew what was right in our relationship, being the strong, independent woman that I was, and that he didn't. Yep. I was so convinced I had it all figured out, and he was just this bumbling boob. Did I just date myself? Sorry. I was the enlightened one. He was the problem. That's literally what our conditioning tells us, okay? That men are the issue and that we can do no wrong. That is what conditioning tells us. So as I was moving through this, there was a hard truth that I had to fix. I was the one running my marriage into the ground. It wasn't until my divorce, when I was literally left picking up the pieces of everything that shattered, that I realized that my ex-husband had been desperately trying to save our relationship. And I was way too caught up in my own superiority and thinking that I had it all figured out to see the damage that I was causing. It was a train wreck. But this realization changed everything. Once I finally got it, okay? Once the dust had settled, once things had just like we were apart and I was alone, because mind you, this happened right as COVID hit. So I spent that whole isolation period of early 2020 completely alone, isolated in my apartment that we had shared. Reminders everywhere of our relationship. And it hit me like a ton of freaking bricks. It was the slap in the face that I needed to figure out that I was the one that screwed it all up. This realization set me down a path of learning, unlearning, completely rethinking what it means to have a strong, loving, and lasting relationship. There's so much stuff I had to undo. It's incredible. And that's why I do what I do now, so that women like you and I do not have to make those same mistakes, do not run their relationships into the ground, do not make these fatal moves that really can just wreck somebody. So that's why I do what I do. And like I said before, a lot of the dating advice is surrounded like him. How do I fix him? But that is not, that will get you nowhere, legit. You doing things to fix him is not how it works. My philosophy, it's all about you. Because when you change how you show up, you're not doing it so that he'll fix himself. You're doing it because you know that you can show up better. You know that you can show up in a loving manner, and the entire relationship dynamic shifts. He may not be the most observant, but he will notice when you start making changes. And what ends up happening is you're not making these changes so that he will change. When you give him a new stimulus, okay, meaning your changed behavior, he will have to have a new response. He might try an old response. He might see a new stimulus and try an old response, but he'll figure out real quick that it doesn't work. And he'll have to shift his own behavior just out of necessity. He won't have a choice but to shift himself. And it's not because you're making him, it's because he learns. He learns that what was old doesn't work anymore. Just like you are currently learning that what was old doesn't work anymore. So the strongest women are the ones who do not have to fight for control. Point blank. They lead with confidence, softness, emotional intelligence, not force. You are not trying to out alpha your partner. Women who have successful relationships have learned to play the long game and lean into their softness without sacrificing who they are. I can't tell you how many women have come to me, they're like, I lost myself in my relationship. I was the same way. Completely lost myself. I was just totally not who I planned on being in that relationship. And I tried to blame my husband, my ex-husband. It wasn't his fault. It was mine. Relationships aren't built on attraction alone. They thrive on trust, respect, and the ability to communicate. Something most of us, including myself, were never taught how to do very well. We think we do. We think we're real good at it. At least I thought I was real good at it. Maybe you're more self-aware than I was at the time. But I was never taught how to communicate well. There was a lot of passive aggression. There was a lot of, you deserved it. There was a lot of like, yeah, that's what you get. Like, I cringe even saying it right now, okay? But even though I grew up in a not so stellar environment, I was able to learn how to show up the way I knew would get me the love that I deserved, okay? We've been conditioned to believe that love is about proving our worth or playing games. But real love, the actual love, it's about connection, understanding, learning how to be a partner. That's the stuff they never teach you. You see on social media all about the red flags in him, all about his red flags, okay? How he's not going to be good enough for you. Well, what about focusing on how you can be like a good partner for him? Like, how are you showing up in this relationship? Instead of focusing on him, bring it home, okay? We're not just looking for someone with a checklist of expectations, okay? It's not about trying to find those red flags so we can keep our armor up, so we can guard our hearts and drop someone the second they disappoint us or don't go along with the script we have for them in our heads. We need to recondition ourselves to value what truly matters when it comes to relationships, which is acceptance, big one, growth, and love. So what you're going to get out of this podcast is not your everyday run of the mill relationship stuff, babe. We're going to be real here. We're going to look at stuff that you would never have thought would be in a relationship podcast. Because that's how we do here. We pull in things from all different avenues, okay? We go deep, and sometimes it's going to be a little unfiltered, okay? We don't have time for fluff. We don't have time to pussyfoot around, okay? We need to get down to it and dig in, because right now, if you're here, I'm going to bet that your relationship is on some real thin threads, okay? And you're here to get real advice that you can put into action right now about what is happening for you right now. We're going to talk about things like emotional intelligence, communication, attraction, boundaries, self-worth, and what it really takes to have the relationship that you want. I want this podcast to feel like a conversation. So if you ever have a question, a topic you want covered, or a story to share, reach out to me on Instagram at the Danielle Grace. Okay, you're gonna find a really cute picture of me. I mean, at the time of this recording, really cute picture of me in a black hat. I want to make sure that every time you leave this podcast, you have some type of actionable step to put into practice. I do not want this to be fluff. I do not want this to be just some feel good stuff, even though there is a time and a place for that. So, no shade. So, the thing that I want to leave you with today that you can put into practice right now and you can use consistently, okay? This is a tool to put in your toolbox, all right? So, this is not just a one and done. You do this as often as you need to, okay? If there's one thing I want you to walk away with, it's time to take your power back in your relationship. Now, I don't mean like controlling and forceful. I mean deep, unshakable power that comes from your self-awareness, which you're already working on, or you wouldn't be here, personal growth, okay? So as I said, we get really caught up in like what our partner is doing. We're conditioned to look at it, okay, not just from social media, but like as humans, we're conditioned to look at other people instead of looking at ourselves. So we analyze what he's doing, what he's not doing, we critique, we get frustrated, and when he doesn't act the way we want him to, we're like, did I pick the right guy? So we need to shift our focus inward. Yes, we're looking at you and how you are showing up. We're not here to blame ourselves, but we're here to grow. And unless we look at how we're showing up and like legit look, critique, then we cannot grow into that partner that we want to be and that we know he deserves. So here's the thing that I'm going to give you to do today. All right. It's called a heart audit. This is where you go inward and you ask yourself one of the hardest questions, but the most life changing questions. That question is, how have I been contributing to the problems in my relationship? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a hard one because you have to, at some level, admit that you have been contributing to the problems in your relationship. And that forces you to think about where you have been contributing to those problems. It's not fun, but it's the work that needs to be done so that You can actually pick it apart and not do it anymore. Okay. And this is all really in consideration of your partner. So this is not about self-blame, it's about self-awareness. This is where the magic of breaking free from victimhood begins. And you focusing on his stuff all the time keeps you in victimhood. This is where you start to see that you have so much more power than you ever imagined, because when you focus on what you can control, you take your happiness, your love life, your future into your own hands. Okay? So when you do this, you begin to heal yourself from the inside out. You stop feeling like your happiness depends on someone else's action. That's where true growth happens. Because right now, if you're focused on him, your happiness is dependent on whether he took out the trash, whether he did what you wanted him to do, whether he's, pulling his weight. And that's not fair to either of you, to put your happiness on his action. So a heart audit levels up your maturity. It helps you develop more patience, kindness, empathy, and it gives you clarity that you need to create the relationship you truly want. So here's your challenge. Sometime today, or like in the next 24 hours, yes, in the next 24 hours, okay, do not put this off. I am so guilty of listening to podcasts or reading something on Instagram and be like, oh, I need to do that. Oh, I need to do that. And then never doing it. Do not put this off, babe. All right. If you have to, stop this right now and sit down with yourself and do it. Okay. Do it for 5 minutes. No distractions. Ask yourself, how have I been contributing to the dynamic in my relationship? Write down what comes up. Be honest, open, and see what patterns you notice. Again, no judgment. This is not a judgment place. This is not for you to sit here and beat yourself up. Okay? That's not what thinking women do. We do not sit here and bash ourselves. This is a straight audit, okay? Like the IRS audits your taxes. They don't care about you. They're looking at the numbers, okay? Do not put emotion on this. Look at it from an objective standpoint, at the facts of your actions. This is your first step toward creating the love and connection you actually want. And trust me, thinking women do not wait for things to change. They start changing them from the inside out. I have a fortune cookie fortune in my wallet. It's been in there for probably nearly a decade at this point, and it says action is the basis for success. You need to take action in order for any of this to change. So we do not wait for life to happen to us. We take charge, we grow, we create relationships that we feel good in. If you are ready to start thinking differently about love and yourself and what's possible for you, then girl, you're in the right place. So hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe wherever it is, wherever you're watching this, whether it's in your Spotify, your Apple, on YouTube, wherever. And if today's intro resonated with you, then you know it's going to resonate with somebody in your circle. Send this to them, or send the next episode to them. Send all of it to these people in your life so you can bring them into your world and you can create that community around you. You get to start being that change. So make sure you hit those subscribe buttons, make sure you hit those follow buttons, share it with whoever it is that you want. And also feel free to share it to your socials. If I'm dropping something that you resonate with, girl, share it. We want as many people as possible to see this, to hear this, to get this information. I'm not the only one that can say these words. You can say these words through me. All right? We'll see you next time.